Thanks very much, and welcome to On the Issues at Marquette University Law School. I'm Mike Goucher, and our guest today is the executive editor and anchor of PBS's NewsHour with Jim Lehrer, the man himself, Jim Lehrer. Let's give him a warm welcome to Marquette Law School.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you here. I have to begin by asking the question that is on the tip of the tongue of, I'm sure, many people in this room. Did you ever think about being a lawyer?
Yes.
Did you really?
Yeah, my dad, in fact, said, Jimmy, when you grow up, you should be a lawyer because you argue with me all the time about everything. And it never came up again.
You're doing a bit of a promotional tour right now for a brand new book that you have out, which we will talk about in the next hour. But I wanted to ask you about leaving Washington for a few days. Do you enjoy getting outside the Beltway? Is that a good, healthy thing?
It's very good and it's very healthy. At least for me it is. Because I'm in Washington all the time, and that's where my job is. And what I love coming out, the reason, it's professional reasons for going. Yes, I'm going door to door selling my new book, but I'm also talking to an awful lot of people. The questions that you're going to ask me, and the questions these folks are going to ask me are going to tell me a lot about what's on their minds and all of that. And it's just a good thing for me to know whether they, not so much what I have to say, but what they have to say to me, everybody, is really a good thing for me.
What do you hear from folks when you talk with them? What are they telling you?
Well, they're, at the risk of sounding like I know what I'm talking about, what we're hearing, at least in terms of the mail we get, the email we get, before I even come out into the country, the message is, and since I've been out for 3 or 4 days, everybody's pretty much saying the same thing. What in the world has happened to the government of the United States? There's a lot of uncertainty about the sure-footedness of both the executive and the legislative branch, and folks that, there's an uneasiness that has to do with Iraq. It has to do with how we got in there, what we're doing there now. It has to do with the Katrina syndrome. It has to do with the growing problems between or gap between the haves and the have-nots, and the subprime mortgage things come up, and the people are worried about things that there's just a lot of concern, and they don't feel like the political system is serving the concerns in such a way that makes everybody, okay, don't worry about it, we got it. People say that, but nobody believes it. And I think that's what this election is all about, and the atmosphere in which this election is happening is about that.
Well, let's talk about the election for a moment, because I cannot remember an election cycle beginning as early as this one has begun. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious, do you sense that your viewers of your program, your broadcast, or the people you talk to, are Americans engaged? Are they watching this election already?
Yes, they are. The anecdotal evidence and the polls show that the most recent poll is something like over 65% of the people were following what was happening in both the Democratic and Republican races. And I think that's for obvious reasons. This is maybe one of the most important elections we've had in this country in a very long time. And it's a wide open race. As we sit here right now in Milwaukee, it's a wide open. Only an idiot would say, so don't ask me, okay? as Richard Nixon said, to paraphrase Richard Nixon, I am not an idiot, so I'm not going to answer the question. But only an idiot would declare at this moment who's going to be the Democratic nominee, who's going to be the Republican nominee. Yeah, we've got all these kinds of things.
We see the polls.
Well, we see the polls, but the polls don't mean anything right now because there's so much stuff on the ground, overseas and here, that an event could change things. A campaign issue could suddenly arise. A campaign thing involving the character of some candidate could arise. A lot of things could happen. And you look at these polls, and somebody said, hey, if somebody had said 6 months ago, 6, 7 months ago, that Rudy Giuliani would be leading the polls for the Republican nomination, and Hillary Clinton would be way ahead, and nobody said, "Are you crazy?" On the Republican side, somebody with his views on guns and abortion and stem cell research leading the Republican race. And Hillary Clinton with all the negatives, her negatives are so high, how could this have happened, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's frail, and it's wonderful that it's taking this long, to tell you the truth. I'm one of those people who thinks it's great that we're going at this slowly, because this is a very important election. We can't afford any mistakes. And let everybody be heard and heard and heard and heard and question and question and question and think about and argue about. And I think it's good.
There have been a lot of debates already. I want to ask you, I mean, one of the factors in the election this time around is the incredible importance of the internet and web-based media. But you've done a lot of moderating of presidential debates and debates themselves. What did you think, for example, of the YouTube debate, which is a new phenomenon in the election process?
I thought it was terrific. I think all these things are terrific. I think, if you get somebody up and say, okay, what's your favorite flower? Or what's your favorite color? You say, well, that's a dodo question. Yeah, it is. But also, somebody has to answer it. And there's the language of the body and the movements, as well as the language and how people handle themselves. And the more they have to handle themselves, and the more you see them on the same stage talking back and forth, even though some of it's...
Did you like the snowman question, for instance? The
well,
global warming
don't press me on that, okay? But I don't think there's any... at this stage of the game, let me be careful how I say this. At this stage of the game, at this stage of the game, there's no such thing as a really irrelevant, stupid question. Now, we get down closer to the election, I probably would not say that. But I think right now, just everybody, you want to do YouTube things, you want to do this and that, do it through the internet, run tapes and have snowmen and women, whatever you want to do it. Because I think it's terrific, because it's going to cause the candidates to reveal something else about them.
You, by my count, have done 10 nationally televised debates in 5 presidential elections. I think in 2000 you did all 3 of the presidential debates by yourself, solo moderator. You did the first one in 2004. I did a couple in '96 in a vice presidential debate. You've done a lot of them. Why do they come to you? Why are you the go-to guy? And how much pressure do you feel going into an evening where you are the person who's really leading that broadcast?
Well, the answer to the first question is why me. It's just because they can't ever agree on anybody else. It isn't.
Why do they agree on you?
I don't know, Mike. I have been very outspoken about what I think a moderator of a presidential debate should do, what his or her role is. It isn't about the moderator. I've often said that if anything I do like that, and somebody's talking about my questions afterward, or something I did, and I have failed, even if it's high praise. Oh, that was a great question you asked, Lehrer. Well, it isn't about the questions. It's about the answers.
You're like an umpire at a baseball game.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
You don't want to be talking about the calls.
Right.
You want to be talking about what the pitcher did, and what in my case, it would be the shortstop did. But so I will. Why me? That's that. Now, the pressure is the most enormous kind of pressure I have ever had in my. It's not like doing television. You know, we do television, and let's say in the I look out at the red light, and let's say in the unlikely event I screw it up. And I just turn to the red light and go, sorry. Turn to the red light and say, sorry about that. Be back tomorrow night and try to do a little better. Mm-hmm. You screw up a presidential debate, or somehow do something, right. Even inadvertent something, you can affect who's going to be the next president of the United States. And that thought never leaves my head from the time I have been asked to do it, and I've agreed to do it. And the pressure is so heavy that I work in a kind of a cocoon at a certain time, 5 or 6 days before a debate. I don't talk to anybody else. The staff, the NewsHour staff, who helps me all the way up till then, boom, cease all communications with everybody. And then I do it all the stuff, and then I only run it by one person. That's my wife. And nobody else knows what I'm going to ask, and nobody else, and I'm trying to, the pressure is this. The pressures are this. If you're going to ask Apple questions, everybody has to have an Apple question. If you're going to do oranges, everybody has to have orange. It's got to be perceived to be apples and apples. It's got to be perceived to be oranges and oranges, whether it is or not. In other words, the perception of fairness, equal play for everybody, is as important in one of these things as the reality. And it is, when those things start, they're 90 minutes, and it's just like that, it's over. Then you think, oh my God, did I do anything? You know, then I'm just going to hold my breath and hope that somebody will say, oh God, did you see what Wawa Jimmy Charles Lehrer did? You know, and anyhow, it's extraordinary, and I have scars to prove it all through my psyche, and it's not journalism. See, that's the other thing. This isn't the practice of journalism. The ability to moderate effectively, in my opinion, comes from journalism. That's where a person can and should probably learn it. But in a journalism situation, you wouldn't moderate a presidential debate the way we would do an interview for television. You don't have you have rules very strict rules in these debate formats, and so the function is very, very different. And I think that's one of the reasons they're so picky. And I don't mean about me, but I mean they're just very picky about who moderates, because it is like holding dynamite in your hands. I mean, you can just ask one question. You could change the nature of a presidential debate, and then possibly what people talk about afterward, and then possibly what an outcome would be. And there's also the tendency, understandable tendency, people might want to use a presidential debate to kind of show how tough they are. Maybe audition for the next job, you know, whatever. So it's fraught.
You know, you've talked at a couple of points here about how you view your role as a journalist, and I know it's something you carry with you. You carry in your pocket the Jim Lehrer rules of journalism, don't you?
Yeah.
Yep, there it is.
Got it.
Okay. So
Guidelines.
It says, I practice journalism in accordance with the following guidelines. And let me just toss out a couple and then ask you to comment on maybe one or two in particular. Some of these I think very straightforward. Do nothing I cannot defend. Cover, write, and present every story with the care I would want if the story were about me. Carefully separate opinion and analysis from straight news stories and clearly label it as such. I think that's appropriate in today's journalism environment. Acknowledge that objectivity may be impossible, but fairness never is. And then two that I think maybe captured this moment in journalism history in this country. One of them is, assume the viewer is as smart and caring and good a person as I am. And the final one here is, I am not in the entertainment business.
That's it.
Well, let me ask you a question about that. What do you think of the television news business today?
Well, they're all in a state of panic. Not all, but many of them are in a state of panic. They don't understand why their audiences are waning in some areas. And so instead of, and the result has been that, we have to be more entertaining. We have to make people cry. We have to make people laugh. That's what we have to do in our newscast. We have to put a little more edge to it, a little more opinion and that sort of stuff. I think we're now seeing the peak of that, and it's beginning to crest and go back, because it hasn't worked. There's a huge, huge example right before us 5 nights a week on one of the network news programs where they did that exact thing, and it failed, and it's still failing, and they have now gone back to the real news. It's the old thing, you know, hey, McNeil and I used to laugh all, Robert McNeil, my best friend and former partner, now retired, but we used to laugh all the time about, we'd love to be at the meeting at some network news division where they say, hey, finally, I've got a great idea. Everybody come in and say, what is it? Let's just cover the news straight. Don't put a little this, that's the way it used to be. I mean, the people forget that. But when the panic turned, when the internet came and a lot of other elements came, there was this say, oh, we got to do something else. And I tell people on the entertainment thing, you know, if you want to be entertained, go to the circus, go to the movies. Don't watch the NewsHour. If, however, that doesn't mean that we may not sometimes do a story that makes somebody cry or makes somebody laugh, but that's not the purpose of the news. The purpose of the news is what Thomas Jefferson said. I hate to, I'm getting all exercise here, but,
That's all right.
but it is, without an informed electorate, you don't have democracy. People have to know the facts to begin, before they start shouting about it, before they start laughing about it, making jokes about it on late night television or even early night television. So we're in the fact business. Those of us in journalism are in the fact business. Now, there are other elements of journalism. You can be an analyzing journalist, or you can be an opinion journalist. But in the beginning, there's got to be a news story. In the beginning, there have to be the facts. And as Pat Moynihan, late Senator Moynihan used to say, you can have your own opinions, but you can't have your own facts. And that's up to us in journalism to make sure that we monitor that for our folks.
People in the news business today who may, for example...
I'll calm down a little bit.
No, that's okay. Right. We like that. People in the news business today, perhaps running a cable news network, would make the argument that when Anna Nicole Smith dies and we go wall to wall with Anna Nicole Smith coverage, we see our ratings go through the roof. What do you say to them? They use that as a justification for more Anna Nicole Smith type stories.
Well, that is absolute nonsense. And let me shoot that down, okay, with the facts, all right? When they say their ratings shoot up, that means they go from 200,000 to 350,000. This is out of 240 million. Mm-hmm. That's right. Mm-hmm. For the record, facts, the NewsHour on PBS, which is 1 hour, 5 nights a week, is considered, somebody said, you know, when they went to an hour, somebody said, my God, I thought they already were an hour. The first time somebody wrote something really nice about McNeil and me, they said, those two guys have the courage to be serious. And I've always said, yeah, and we also have the courage to be boring every once in a while. But for the record, when our program is on, we just have some new information on this, ratings and other stuff, that when our program is on the air, we have from 2.5 to 3 million people watching the NewsHour. Okay, that doesn't include the repeats. That doesn't include simultaneous broadcasts on public radio. That is more than any other cable news or news-like program on television, including
substantially more.
Substantially more,
mm-hmm.
including Oberman. Our audience is 2 and 3 times that of Hardball, Situation Room, Anderson Cooper. You go through all the list. And just for the record, boys and girls, our audience is larger than the combined first run and repeats of Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart. Now, those are the facts, okay? And I will leave the facts where they are, but what it says, though, is that when you know, it's the old story about breaking news at the bottom of the screen, you know, and the worst problem for that is, what worries me sometimes, doesn't anymore, is that these television sets are on cable news, on every newsroom in the country, radio newsrooms, newspaper newsrooms, and they could influence, like the old wire machines, you know, just watch cable television. Well, breaking news, Anna Nicole Smith is still dead, or whatever the hell it is. You know, and then if you some guy sitting in the news desk of some news organization says, oh, well, we got to do that, you know, because everybody knows this. No. Everybody does not sit and watch one of these cable news networks all day. These people go to school, they go to work, they go play baseball, they go eat lunch. It is just not happening. And the internet's the same way. I mean, the bloggers have taken over. Well, the bloggers are a terrific, I think, development. I think that all these things are terrific developments. And I don't think anybody should be chastised or in any way or encouraged not to do what they're doing. In fact, just the opposite. But we must never lose sight of the fact that it's a small aggregate number of folks. The most people the daily newspapers and the wire services, the mainstream, the nightly news programs, sure, their audiences are down, but they still have 30, 40 million people watching them every day. I mean, that is an enormous number of people.
What do you think their future is? The nightly newscast, yours, World News Tonight, NBC Nightly News. What is the future?
I think they have a terrific future if they stay in the news business. I think they have a deserved short future if they do not.
I want to spend a couple of moments talking about another love in your life, and that is writing and Maybe some of you are aware of this. Maybe some of you have read some of Jim's books, but...
I'm sure they all have.
Oh, I'm sure. 17 novels. He's just written his 17th. 2 memoirs, 3 plays. The writing bug bit you at an early age, didn't it?
16 years old, yep.
What was it about it? What is it about it that continues to have you feel so passionately about it?
Well, it's the ability for me to go off into other worlds and to explore the humankind, the human spirit, and all that sort of stuff. It is real to me, and I love telling stories. I love it. I love thinking of, okay, this happens and that happens, and the peaks and valleys of the narrative. All of that stuff gives me a great, great kick. And also, I am, despite the fact that I've been on television for 40 years, 30 years, 35 years, whatever long it is, how easily the days go by, I'm still I'm a written word person. And the written words on a page excite me, and I cannot resist reading them. I can't not resist filling up the empty page, as they say. And I'm a writer. I tell people all the time that writing's a natural act for me now. It's not. I don't even know what writer's block could conceivably be. And I tell
When
people,
do you have time, Jim?
well, I get up early in the morning. Mike, we all know that we all have time to do things that really matter to us.
Mm-hmm.
This really matters to me. So I get up very early every morning. We work morning newspaper hours in the NewsHour, meaning our first big editorial meeting is 10:15 in the morning. I'm at the office at 8. Nobody's there. And that's every day. I do a little bit every day. And if a young person asked me, well, how do you do all that? And I said, well, person interested in writing a novel. And I said, well, let's see. Do you think you could write 1 page a day? Oh, sure. I said, well, let's say you did it 1 page a day for 300 days. How many pages would you have? And what is 300 pages? It's about the size of a good novel. Mm-hmm. So if you think of it in those kinds of terms, and if you, in my case, when I'm working on a novel, and I always am, I just never let it get cold because I'm doing it every day. So it's like having a low-grade fever. It's with me all the time, and and I get jumpy when I'm not writing, not when I do.
They say write what you know, and so now I'll talk about Jim's new book, which is called Eureka, and it's about a very successful business executive in Eureka, Kansas, who has, I guess you could call it a bit of a midlife crisis. Mm-hmm. So my question is, if you're writing what you know, is this, is there a story you'd like to tell us?
Well, now, some of it you have to make up, Mike. Not a whole cloth.
Embellish a little.
Embellish.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know of anybody, including myself, who hasn't had uncertainties about who you are and what you're doing, what you've done, what you want to do. I would think self-examination on a regular basis is a very healthy thing. Now, if it goes deeply into a midlife crisis, there were times when, and particularly when I was in my late 30s, I was a newspaper man, and I wanted to be a novelist at the same time. I was writing at the same time. I had a lot of problems with it because we had I had a wife and 3 small children who didn't understand that they needed some of my attention as well. It was a difficult time, and I wasn't sure it was going to work for me. But I know a lot of people who, particularly in the journalism world, who I happen to know a lot of them, who just at certain times, hey, wait a minute, is this all there is? But there are others who say, yes, and it's wonderful. Others say, oh my. And Otis Halstead, my character, who's not a newspaper person, but said, no, I would like to kind of rethink my life. And he does.
Mm-hmm. Let me close my part of this question and answer period with a question about the biggest stories you covered. You touched on being a print journalist. You covered the Kennedy assassination when you were a newspaper reporter in Dallas. Is that the biggest story? What do you think? Was there one that really comes to mind?
It's clearly the Kennedy assassination. I have never, ever covered a story or thought about covering a story that's in a league with that, just in terms of the impact of the story, the definition of what is news. That is the definition of what is news, and there's been no other definition. No other event has come along as just an event. But for me personally, I covered that story. I was at Love Field. I went to the Parkland Hospital and was there when they announced the president was dead. I went to the police station, was there when they brought in Oswald. I had some things happen, happenstance things happen. I was then assigned by my newspaper, the Dallas Times-Herald, to cover the assassination aftermath full-time, which is what I did for 6 months. And I tell you one, got time for a quick story? I was at Love Field when the Kennedys came in on Air Force One. My assignment was they were coming in around noon, and they were going to only be there 2 or 3 hours, and it was because it was an afternoon newspaper. We had deadlines all day, and our whole staff was covering this. The president was going to come in and leave. And and my assignment was to cover the arrival at Love Field and stay there until he left. And I had an open telephone line right by where the plane was going to come in, a fence with people behind it. And the open telephone line was to the rewrite desk. And I was testing the phone. The rewrite man says, "Hey, look, are they going to have the bubble on the limousine that would cover the president and the president, Mrs. Kennedy, and the Conleys, because it had been raining in the morning." And I said, "I don't know. I can't see. The motorcade was down a ramp, lined up down, and I couldn't see it." And he said, "Well, it would be great if you could find out, because then when I'm writing under deadline, I'd know whether the bubble was there." So I went down there and I saw the motorcade, and the cars were lined up, and the presidential limousine did have the plastic bubble on it. There was a Secret Service guy who was in charge, who I knew because I'd been the federal reporter, and I said to him, "Rewrite wants to know whether or not you're going to keep the bubble up." And the Secret Service guy says, "Well, it has quit ringing, hasn't it?" And he yells at another agent who has a two-way radio, and he yells into an agent downtown and says, "Is it raining downtown?" The guy's, he says, "Okay, take the bubble off." All right. Assassination occurs. I'm at the police station, midnight, chaos. Reporters, Secret Service agents, FBI agents, cops, the whole 9 yards. There's a meeting in the far back, police chief's office, all kinds of law enforcement people, and the closed door meeting. The door opens, and out walk 5 or 6 people who were in the meeting, including this Secret Service guy. And he sees me, and he comes over to me. I've known this guy because I was covering. He comes over and big tears in his eyes, and he says, he was an old man, 45, probably. Tears in his eyes, says, "Jim, I just hadn't taken the bubble off." Because the bubble wasn't protective, but it would have deflected the shot, you see, a plastic thing. And then I'm thinking, if I hadn't asked, and then I'm thinking, if the rewrite man hadn't, all these things. Now, there are thousands of stories like this in an event. But as a journalist, practicing journalism right now, today, it taught me once in a most dramatic way that the consequences, the unintended consequences of doing your job as a journalist are always possible. And in this case, it is with me. I mean, it'll be with me forever. Not in any kind of guilt feeling. I didn't do anything wrong. That's my job. I did it. But that's the point. Yeah.
Let's now take your questions. And maybe that's a great point for us to depart into audience questions. What I'd like to do is ask you to stand up, maybe say who you are, and we will bring a microphone over, since this is for broadcast, so we can hear your questions. So we'll start right here. Go ahead, and if we can bring the microphone over to him, Dax, we'll begin.
My name is Frank DeGeer. Jim, I am a big fan of public television and public radio, but I have concerns about the public support for those media as we go forward with all of the other forms that are coming into being. What do you think?
Well, I share your concern. There's no question about it. It's a lot of, take the NewsHour. We have 3 or 4, we have public support, stations, the PBS stations, through the PBS, pays what for all practical purposes a fee for, it's all based on the size of audience and size of the city and all that. But then we have money from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but we also have some corporate and foundation support. And it's like going door to door. It's difficult, and it always has been difficult. And I've always taken the position, it sounds weird, you just have to trust me on this, that I'm not, I'll just tell you that I've always felt it was really good to be a little hungry, to be a little, in other words, journalism is something that should be based on no bells, no whistles. If you have a lot of money for bells and whistles, you end up, sometimes the technology will take over from the reporting and all that sort of stuff. Believe me, it's never happened with the NewsHour. It never will. But we have just enough money to do what we need to do journalistically. And I wish sometimes we had more, and the public support, as I say, we've been going to door for 32 years. And sometimes, you know, we have to cut back a little bit. We haven't had to lay anybody off. We haven't had to do that. We just, you know, but we've used our best resources the best way we possibly can. The big picture I can't help you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions, please? We'll go right back here, and then we'll go over there, and then we'll jump back there.
Hi, my name is Mark Toth. Recently on public radio, they aired a commentary by, I think his name is Daniel Shore, and he talked about TV news anchors. And he was, are you familiar with, do you know what I'm talking about?
Nope.
Referring to?
I know what TV anchors are, and I know what Daniel Shore is.
Okay, well, maybe I could tie them together then. He talked about a TV news anchor who, it was a couple of years ago, who aired a story about our current president, and he kind of backed the story. They continued to run it, and it proved to be a false story, and it affected his career. And so Daniel Shore was talking about that and kind of defending this anchor, saying that, you know, they're not as responsible for what happens as you might think. They're kind of a front man, and they're fed this information. They're a face. So maybe you know the perspective that I'm referring to, that Daniel
I know the
Shore
person
gave.
you're referring to.
Okay.
You're
I guess
talking about Dan Rather. You're talking about Dan Rather, right?
That's correct. And I guess I wonder if that appraisal of the TV anchor, if you share that view, or if that's true to some extent, is it different for public television, your experience of being an anchor, than maybe the networks and what the reality is there? Thanks.
At the NewsHour, all the anchors, including the person who's now speaking, is a journalist first and foremost, and nobody. I mean, certainly we have all kinds of help in gathering information and advice on various approaches and all of that, but the final decisions are always made, informed decisions are made by the anchors. In commercial television, I know some of the past and present commercial anchor people, and they're all just as professional as anybody in public broadcasting. The thing about it, the other issue here, though, which is crucial and something that for people who are interested in supporting public broadcasting and should know about the NewsHour, when Rather said, I have a theory about the Rather thing that you may not agree with, but that if Rather had said, when that story was first challenged, if he'd said, "You, my gosh, we'll take a look at that right now," and because the last thing in the world we want to do is broadcast something that is wrong, he'd still be anchoring the nightly news tonight. Because that's what we do. I mean, if somebody challenges something that we have done, for God's sake, I mean, we would jump on that, because we don't want to, but what Rather said was, we stand by our story, without ever even examining the possibility that a mistake was made. And because if anybody who's practiced journalism for more than 15 minutes knows that the possibility for error is everywhere. Unintentional error. Forget intentional error. But the unintentional, somebody working very hard to get it right, you're still going to get it wrong occasionally. You're going to misquote somebody. You're going to see something that's white and it's going to be black. You're going to see something blue and it's going to actually have been green. There's all these things. And this is among among the most professional, careful people of all. So when Rather made that statement and he hung in there, he hung himself, in my opinion.
Are journalists too quick to immediately say, I stand by the story?
Oh, I think
Too
so.
quick?
I think it's
almost
just
a
not
defense mechanism, yeah.
and it's not realistic. It just defies humankind. If you say, I stand by my story and everything I report is absolutely 100% correct, how dare you question that is what's called arrogance. And it can be, and we all know it when we see it, and we can see it in everything. It's not just journalism, but I mean, arrogance has gotten us into an awful lot of trouble, deservedly so. I feel bad. I know Dan Ray. He's a good guy. I've known him for years. He's also from, he speaks with the same accent I do. And he's also a Marine as I was. And not at the same time, but pretty much the same time. But so, I mean, and I know this, and I have not said, I would say this to his face. I've said it pretty much. So I don't, it's not so, he's more of a symptom of a problem that I think, for the most part, is going away.
I'll go to this side of the room, then I'll come back over here. Go ahead.
Mr. Lehrer, thank you for coming here to Marquette. I'm Jason Ardanowski from the Political Science Department.
Okay?
And in your remarks, you said something intriguing. You felt that the long 2008 campaign was a good thing, by and large, that it allowed longer time for people to put their positions on the table, respond to them, etc. How would you respond to the criticism that long campaigns, like the ones we have now, reward the best campaigners, the best fundraisers, and not the best public servants? And that it's even more acute, not just at the presidential race, but in Senate and House elections. Thank you.
Well, it's a valid point, but I think in this particular case, yes, raising money means an awful lot, and you raise more money, you get more attention, whatever, but the longer the campaign, there's all this free exposure. I mean, Mike Gravel's raised $250, and he's in all these, he was just on the NewsHour for 20 minutes. We're going through 20 minutes with every candidate, and people are discovering these people are more interesting than they've ever been allowed to show, and that's not a end result of money. These debates are not the end result of money. I think the bottom line for me, and I feel free, and I'm not saying this is the only way to think about this, but I think the longer the campaign, the less likely we are to be tricked into voting for somebody. And because we got time to think about it, we got time to read about it. If you really care about it, I'm saying that because most of these debates have very small audiences, but the clips from the debates, the print analysis and other kinds of analysis of these debates are going all over the country. So there is a kind of national campaign underway beyond, because otherwise, if we weren't doing this, here's what would happen. To give the other side of this, from what you said, is that if we had a short campaign and no debates like we've been having, not this proliferation of debates, they'd be going these candidates would be going door to door in Iowa and New Hampshire, and that's all they do. Because it would just go boom. And then this has opened things up. Now, what the end result is going to be, we'll have to wait and see. But I hear what you're saying, and your perspective is just as valid as mine. So I'm not.
Mm-hmm. Let's take another question right here.
Hi, Virginia Chapel. I teach writing here.
Terrific. Writing?
Writing.
Ah,
And
like to write double-spaced writing? I mean, creative writing or?
I run the first-year program, and I teach advanced composition.
Oh, terrific.
And I'm a former journalist.
Oh, great.
I have two questions, but I'll ask you the one about conflict on the NewsHour.
Mm-hmm.
In the old days, it seemed like your guests came to loggerheads more often than they do these days, and I'm wondering how you and the other anchors, the reporters, producers, how you manage that. Is it good luck? Are the issues different? What's your thinking about that?
It's a very good question. I haven't noticed it myself. No. We are, when McNeil started and I was there with him, but I mean, he was really the guy who started it. The whole point of the exercise was civil discourse. I mean, he used to say all the time, and I agree, it's very easy to start a fire in a television studio. It's much harder to start light in a television studio. And so we just gradually, over a period of time, we wanted that from the beginning, and we practiced it from the very beginning, and we enforce it now. We've had some people who step over the line, and we just don't have them back. We tell them. And we have a problem with reporters who, because they think, because of the cable television influence, whether you're supposed to give it a little bit of edge, we say, no. You don't do it. Just answer the question. When somebody asks you, what day it is, just say Friday. So don't compare it with Thursday versus Wednesday versus, what. You don't need to put it in any kind of. It's really important to us that we had an example of it last week. We actually had been taped a few days earlier, but it was about the Israel lobby, and we had both sides on that, and these folks hate each other. And they knew when they came, because they'd watched the program on both sides, these two authors of these competing books, they knew that they were not yelling at each other wasn't going to get it. And it's just the way we do it. If it has changed, it is, you're more observant than I am, because I haven't noticed it.
Other questions? Let's go right down here.
Hi, Paulo Gutadaro. You mentioned the rise of entertainment in news journalism, as well as The Daily Show and the Colbert Report. How do you think these satirical news broadcasts help, hurt, or don't really affect the field of journalism?
I don't think they affect the field of journalism. Stewart and Colbert would be the first to tell you, and just like I say, I'm not in the entertainment business, they say, I'm not in the news business. They know that if Stewart or Colbert says something funny tonight about a certain news event, nobody's going to laugh. They don't know what the hell they're talking about before they tell the joke, unless it's some kind of sight joke or something like that. Somebody falls on their face and it's about Iraq, then okay, but that's my point. It's always been that in the beginning there has to be a news story, and for Colbert, the Colberts and the Stewart, I think they do terrific. I think they're great programs. I've been on both of them. And you talk about treachery. Treachery. I thought, oh my God, what are they going to do to me? And they were very nice to me. And but the basis on which they operate is that they do their program for informed people, because uninformed people wouldn't know what the joke was about.
Other questions? Right here.
Hi, Mr. Lehrer. My name is
Hi.
Marvin Bynum. I'm also a former journalist, but now I'm a 1L, first-year law student here.
Good.
I've only voted in 3 presidential elections. This will be my 4th in 2008. So I don't know if there's truly a thing as a person as a modest presidential candidate. But that being said, how do you manage to, or maybe what are your favorite tactics or most useful tactics in helping keep those egos in check as a debate moderator, so that what we find useful as viewers actually gets through instead of these outsized egos?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to. The problem is you have to have pretty big ego to be on television to begin with. I mean, what would possess somebody to think that you could look out at a camera and millions of people watch you and it should matter? So you have to really have a good sense of yourself. There's no such thing as an immodest television anchor person or a television news person. It just doesn't work. And so it's counterintuitive, you see. To be modest, to appear modest on television is not in sync with the personality that's required to be able to do that in the first place. But I think the thing is that what I have learned on my own experience and preached to everybody who's involved in this kind of stuff is that if you David Brinkley's the one who first told me this, the late David Brinkley was a friend of mine, great role model for me. Brinkley went out, he was in the highest days of the Huntley-Brinkley Report. He went out to do a story and covering some political candidate. There was a huge crowd there, and they saw David Brinkley, and they turned and looked at him and didn't pay any attention to the candidate. And it was written up at the time, and I talked to him about it, And he said he realized this was long. I mean, I talked about it many years later. He said that taught him forever that if TV people or any kind of journalists that have TV, they're the most visible, obviously. You don't see a radio reporter. You don't see a print reporter. If you put yourself between the audience or the readership and you become more important than the story, more important than the people you're interviewing, you need to get out of that line of work. And I think that you can see it. I mean, you really can. You can watch television folks, and they really talk like they really do believe that they are the most important things here. I don't care about you, Governor. I don't care about you, President. I don't care about you, Billy Bob, County Commissioner. I'm the one. And it has to be wrung out of them. But as they go up the scale, if it works for them, they continue to do it, and I don't have an answer except just to point it out and humiliate them whenever I can.
Let me see, other questions? Sure. And hang on a second while we get a microphone. Dax, I think we're right in the back of the room there.
To finish the thing, I knew a guy who was one of these local TV anchor types, and I used to say,
Careful.
yeah, I know. This particular guy,
Okay.
he was one of these guys who would wake up in the morning and say, "Good morning, dear, this is your husband." To the question.
There's something wrong with that? Go ahead.
I know, you guys are a hard act to follow. My name's Michael Odell. I'm from West Allis. Just a short comment and then a question. And the comment is that we lost a rather remarkable TV anchor here a year or so ago who's sitting up here next to you right now. And Milwaukee News has been the poorer for it since then. And I would just like to suggest that next time there's an opening on PBS, this would be a good man to consider. You don't need to comment on that.
Well, Mike, I will certainly consider that.
My question, you made reference earlier to civil discourse as being one of the guiding principles on PBS News. It seems to me that that's what's lacking in our political life, and I found that very distressing, as I'm sure many have. And I think that's part of the reason, at least, why we still have no budget, for example, here in Wisconsin, because people on different sides of an issue are more interested in scoring points than in resolving an issue. And I was wondering if, from your contacts in Washington, your experience there, you see any hope for that to change, for there to be some voices of moderation and civil discourse emerging. Thank you.
I share your concern. I wish I could tell you that I see ahead a reduction of this. I do not. I think it's growing, in fact, right now. They may peak and valley a little bit between now and the election. I don't know. It's not just the budget. It's resolving Iraq. It's fixing Louisiana and Mississippi and the Gulf Coast after Katrina. All these things aren't being done because scoring political points has become a priority rather than doing something in the name of the government of the United States and thus the people of the United States. And as long as that continues, we're going to have uncivil discourse. If all you want to do is score points, it's not going to change. Sorry.
Let me take one more question. Let's go over to this gentleman right here. Well, hang on 1 second while we get a microphone your way. Thanks.
My name is Paul Heidebrecht. I'm an international student here, and I'd just be interested in hearing you comment on how the NewsHour balances national and international news and how you work at that.
We cover more international news than any other television program on the air, and not just Iraq. We've always had a commitment to it, kind of in rough terms. One of the things, they used to say, McNeil was a foreign correspondent before we started, and he went all over the world, and Lehrer was a newspaperman in Texas, and he went all over Texas. Okay. Sometimes he went to Kansas, back home to Kansas, and sometimes he went to Oklahoma, but other than that, that was his travel. I was in the Marine. I forgot about that. I did go to the Far East when I was in the Marines. But for all practical purposes, I was not a foreign correspondent. He was. He brought, that's why we meshed. That's why we were successful. His perspective was very different than mine. And I looked at it from the courthouse level. He looked at it from a much further away perspective. And as a consequence, we made the decision before we ever went on the air that we were going to cover foreign affairs. No, we didn't have to wait for wars or pestilence or any of that sort of stuff. But I'll tell you the downside of this. In the first few months of the news of what was then called the McNeil-Lehrer report, or even before that, the Robert McNeil report, McNeil had a house once in Portugal, and so he would love Portugal. And there were some elections coming up in Portugal, and he said, let's devote. We did one story a night. He said, let's do 30 minutes on these Portuguese elections. I said, oh, great. You do it, Robin. Anyhow, then we're all set to do it. He gets sick. So I have to do 30 minutes on the Portuguese election. And the old story about putting 10 pounds in a 5-pound bag, well, we managed to put 5 pounds in a 10-pound bag. And about 12 minutes into this 30-minute broadcast, I looked up at the clock and I realized, my God, we've now told the American people more than they're going to ever want to know about the Portuguese elections. And then about 16 minutes in, I realized now we've told the Portuguese people more than they ever want to know. But that problem aside, we have made a huge commitment in the beginning, which we still honor, to cover foreign affairs beyond the obvious.
Let me close this with, might seem like an unusual question, but we have a lot of young folks in this room. You have talked a couple of times today about your service in the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. 3 years?
3 years. Mm-hmm.
What did you learn from that? And do you think a national mandatory service of some kind would be a good idea for young folks in this country?
Yes, 100 times yes. And that's based on my experience. It's also based on the reality of our times. My experience, so I said I was a punk kid. I went in the Marine Corps. Everybody looked like me. Everybody I knew talked like me, thought like me. And then suddenly I was with a group of people that didn't look anything like me, didn't talk like me, didn't think like me. But suddenly we were interdependent. We were interlocked. Because the Marine Corps teaches you you're only as safe and as secure as the person on your right and on your left. And so once you start depending on somebody else, and they start depending on you, to learn what that means, what real dependence means, it changes you. It also changes all the cliches. Ever since I got out of the Marine Corps, somebody says to me, oh, well, he's just a left-handed billionaire's son from Oklahoma. I was in the Marine Corps with one of those. Oh, he's just a Harlem kid, poor kid from Harlem. I was in the Marine Corps with one of them. I was in the Marine Corps with one of every kind of person there was. And these are people that it wasn't that we were all close buddies. It wasn't that they were all great people as human beings. But the need that is built into a team kind of service thing requires everybody to do their job and to do it well and to take care of one another. And that's with me forever. And now, more recently, 9/11 happened, and every piece of evidence showed that the young people in America wanted to do something for their country, and there wasn't anything for them to do. There was no structure, nothing. And so I think a national mandatory, not everybody join the Marine Corps for God's sake, but some form. Go to the Peace Corps, Teacher Corps, whatever. Tie in education to it. And make no exemptions like there was in Iraq. I mean, in Vietnam, everybody has to serve, and men and women, and figure out ways that it could be in combination with private industry, private. I don't know how it could be. I'm not a proposalist. I'm just a simple, humble journalist. But I know that there's something wrong here. That because you can now grow up. It's back the way it used to be. You can grow up and never see hide nor hair of anybody who isn't exactly like you. And it's not fair. And it's also, volunteer service now is only for the really rich kids. They're the ones who can lay out a year, they could, and work for, and take a job that only pays $15 a week or something like that. Most of these kids got to go to work, and they got to go to school, and they got to go, if they're going to go to school, they got to work and go to school. So it's not fair to say, oh, well, go volunteer. Yeah, sure, great. But there's got to be other things. Anyhow, I won't, I was ranting and raving again. It's your fault.
No. I'll take full responsibility. I'd like to say thank you to all of you for attending today. And again, a very special thank you to Jim Lehrer. Thanks very much.